Hello, welcome to this AimHi Live. I can see that loads of people in the chat are already talking about birthdays, and already in the chat we have two people who share a birthday. If you were here for the thing, was it last week that we were doing it? That we proved that if you have 70 people in a room, then the chance of two or more people sharing a birthday is what? See, in fact, who remembers? If you've got 70 people in a room or more, if you've got 70 people in a room, what is the chance of two or more people sharing a birthday? 70 people. What do you reckon? Hi, everyone. Hi, Izzy. Hi, Kieran. Hi, Jeff. Jeff, happy birthday in a few days. Hi, Leonard. Hi, Angel's here. Rebecca's here. God, everyone's here. Hi, guys. It's like 99.9%. Oh, thanks, Pumpkin Master. Yeah, Pumpkin Master's just talking about one of the songs that I made called Riddles. Yeah, I like riddles. My favourite, the one that I like the most is Join Hands. If you want to check it out, it's called Ashlad. Anyway, enough from me. So this is an Aim High Live. So if you're joining for the first time, then ask questions whenever you want. If you are joining on Facebook, then you will find that you only see the comments that are made on Facebook and you miss out on everyone else's comments. So go here if you want to see all of the comments and what everyone's saying. Most people will be watching on the website. And if you're watching on my YouTube as well, then go there so that you can get the sketch for what's coming up next. Okay. Probability. Oh, Kieran's saying that probability is weird. Yeah, 99.99% is the chance of. I think it's 99.99% is the chance of two or more people sharing a birthday if there are 70 people in a room. You only need about 20, I think it's 21 or 22 people in a room before the chance of two or more people sharing a birthday is more than half, which is mad. Anyway, right, so today it's going to be about, if you could choose, should you be female or male? What do you guys reckon? Let's get some initial thoughts in. Ooh. Yeah, if you could choose, should you be female or male? What do you guys think? And also first I'm going to ask about this. I've asked this question before, but I love asking this question, so I'm going to keep asking it, see what people think. Okay, Kieran's saying female. Max saying depending on what species. Good answer, Max. It does depend on what species. That is important. Leonard's saying that 40 people in a room is an 85% chance of sharing a birthday. I think that sounds about right. Angel's saying being a female is tough. Maddie's saying male. Leonard's saying female. Leonardo's saying it's like okay. I can't tell exactly, but it sounds to me like most of the males are saying that it would be better to be female, and most of the females are saying that it would be better to be male. Is the vibe I'm getting from the chat, right? Anyway, and obviously I can't tell if people are male or female on the chat or non-binary if you don't identify as male or female. But it looks a little bit from the chat as if people are basically saying they'd prefer to be the thing that they're not. Anyway, right. So but first before we start talking about that, because we'll just wait for everyone to join. What can swim faster, a dog or a horse? And I've spoken to some of you about this before. If you've been on a previous live. What do you think? What can swim faster, a dog or a horse? And Jasmine's saying males always end up dead. Everyone. I mean, it's a bleak thought, Jasmine. I mean, it's an important thought, but everybody dies, male or female. And Max is saying same speed. Jasmine's saying horse. You guys are saying okay, right. Here's a different question before we talk about the maximum speed of a horse that they can. Before we talk about which can swim faster, a dog or a horse. What is the maximum horsepower of a horse? The max horsepower. Now, if you haven't heard of horsepower before, horsepower is used to describe the power of engines. So an engine will always be given a horsepower. What is the max horsepower of a horse? Rebecca's coming in with 1. Max is coming in with 16. Kieran's coming in with 15. Maddie, 15 as well. Yeah, it is 15. I've probably talked either good knowledge, or I've talked about this before, or that is good knowledge as well because you've learnt it. Yeah, the max horsepower of a horse is 15 because horsepower is measured as the sustained power that a horse can transfer as it's moving over a long period of time. So the maximum horsepower of a horse is normally about 15. Why? Yeah. Because sorry, Izzy. I think I just saw your comment after I explained it. So yeah, obviously horses can easily outperform their supposed average record. But So the reason, for those of you who don't know, the reason why I got really into this question of what can swim faster, a dog or a horse, is because a friend of mine who, in fact, you can find her if you want on the internet. She's called Sophie, and she's in my podcast. She calls herself Soph's Notes, and the podcast is called A Piece of String. That's my podcast, and she's in it, and she's very funny. And she asked me one day, what can swim faster, a dog or a horse? And I got really, really into it. And I looked on Wikipedia and I found out that the maximum speed that a horse could swim is 30 kilometers per hour. Now, what do you guys think of that speed as the speed the horse can swim? How does that sound to you? Does that sound quicker than you expected or slower than you expected? What do you reckon? And while I'm waiting for things to come in, I'll just say again, thanks for coming. If you are late joining, this is an AimHi Live, so you can ask questions whenever you want. If you are on the website, this is the address for that. You'll be able to see what everyone's saying because it brings in the comments from all the different platforms, whereas if you're on something like Facebook, you won't be able to see most of the convo. What else? Oh yeah, and the topic that we're doing is if you could choose, should he be female or male? But before we start on that, I'm just asking people about this horse and what people think about the speed of a horse going 30 kilometers per hour. Rebecca runs at like 11 kilometers per hour, so it's pretty fast. Leonard's saying that's the speed of the Earth. The Earth's faster than 30 kilometers per hour, isn't it? And Maddie's saying their land speed is 70 miles per hour. I'm not if that sounds really fast for a horse, but maybe I've lost track of what you guys are saying. Okay, so I can see up here, that sounds really fast for water. Yes, okay. Yeah, Angel and Jeff seem to be saying the same thing. Yeah, it does seem really fast for water, doesn't it? Now, I'm not too good at kind of looking at numbers sometimes and immediately converting them into something you can think about, so I like to compare it to something. So in order to compare this, I'm just gonna, in order to compare this horse to get an idea of how fast it was swimming, I thought, well, I'll look up the speed that it runs, and horses run at a maximum of 30 kilometers per hour, approximately. Maybe some fast horses will slightly outdo that. But I was like, hang on a minute, how can a horse run and swim at the same speed? Anyway, it turns out that this is one of those classic occasions that you've got to be very careful of, where Wikipedia is full of lies, full to the brim. And it turns out horses can't swim anywhere near as fast as 30 kilometers per hour. And whether or not they can swim faster than a dog, you have to go and test it. When I tested it, they were pretty similar actually, because obviously horses have got long spindly legs, but dogs are kind of weaker. But yeah, it's really close. And when I've tested it, I've not come to good conclusions. So Jeff's saying he thought horses ran about 45 kilometers per hour, so 45 miles per hour, and 45 is their max. 45 is their max. Is that their Is 45 kilometers? Is it 45 kilometers per hour or miles per hour? Because that sounds at miles per hour. That sounds really, really fast. Maybe 45 kilometers per hour for a horse sounds reasonable. People are asking what my dog is. My dog is a Sprocker Spaniel. He's which is like a cross between a cocker and a Springer. Anyway, enough of dogs. Let's talk about if you could choose, should he be male or female? Here we go. So the first thing is this. Whew. Does anyone know what this little critter is? Kieran's asking, how did I test this? Mate, I went to a horse swimming pool, which turns out is a thing. And there were horses just swimming there. And so I just I just timed one and I got a dog in and I timed that swimming as well. And I described that as really good science, really good laboratory conditions, testable and so on. It's not a good experiment, but it was a fun day out. Okay, people are saying, is it a shrimp? Is it prawn? No, it is this little creature. It is a shrimp. It's called a peppermint shrimp because it looks a bit like peppermint candy. Peppermint shrimp. And peppermint shrimps are a really interesting little creature because all of them are born. What? What do you guys think is going to come next? All are born, fill in the gap. He is a little cute shrimp, isn't he? Oh, Jeff's talking about mantis shrimps being able to see a lot of colour while people are putting in their guesses there. All are born legends. So yeah, there is some shrimp that have the ability in their eyes. They have a lot of colour receptors, so theoretically they can see a lot of colours. But it's difficult to test whether they can perceive them or not in the same kind of ways that we can. But they certainly have the machinery to detect more colours than we can. Peppermint shrimp, why they do not taste like peppermint. Exactly. They are all born male. Every single one of them is born male. I meant to say, by the way, at the beginning, and I should say now before it kind of dives into this, most of the lives that we're doing are kind of suitable for like eight to adult, but this one is maybe more towards the like 11 plus. Just so you know, because I'm just going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff. Anyway, so if every single one of them is born male, then this is going to cause a problem because there are no shrimp for them to reproduce with, right? So, what do you think happens? Where do the females come from? Why? Like, does anyone have any idea why a female shrimp might arise? So Jasmine's talking about another fish that was featured on Blue Planet that also changed sex between male and female. That is quite a common thing in the animal kingdom to flip. So exactly, they switch between male and female. So whilst they're all born male, eventually they will become female. Now it's kind of like a game of chicken because none of them really wants to be female, because if they're female, then reproduction is a lot more of a burden because they have to produce the eggs, they have to raise the eggs, they have to give them a lot more energy. Whereas if they're male, then the burden of reproduction is very, very small. And so it's just the females who have to put in loads of resources. And so basically the peppermint shrimp spend their whole lives trying to avoid having to become female. But eventually they will do. And when they are female, all the other male shrimp will chase them down. Actually, they become hermaphrodite, which is a mixture between male and female. But when they are female, the males will chase them down, and then they'll end up raising young as female. Right. But the key idea here is that for some reason these shrimp don't want to be female, right? So yeah, Terawawa is already saying like being a girl sucks as a shrimp, and Angel is saying that sounds terrifying. Exactly. So I wanted to show you just first a couple of examples in the animal kingdom of things that don't want to be female, even though there's kind of like a choice involved. So here's another example. This slug looks really cute, but is not. This slug is called a Scyphopteron slug. Ooh, Scyphopteron slug. And this slug essentially is male and female simultaneously. And when two slugs meet one another, they will fight. And the winner gets to be male and the loser is female, and that's how they then reproduce. But it could go either way. Whichever one loses the fight becomes the female. And again, there's this sense of animals trying not to be the female because it's a bigger burden on reproduction. Right, okay, so let's talk about why this happens here, and then you'll start to see why actually all of this will start to turn on its head. So here we go. Back in the day, and let's stay up here. Let's stay up here in the ocean with the Scyphopteron slug. But first, I'm just gonna see what's in the chat because Max just thrown in a long one. Why is it that in species like walruses there is an equal amount of being born as male and female? While only a few males get to reproduce, but almost all the females get to reproduce. Isn't that a waste of resources? Okay, Max. So yeah, in some species you have an equal amount of male and female being born, but only a few of the males get to reproduce because there's this kind of fighting for dominance for the collection of females. But what that does is it's an evolutionary pressure in that only the stronger males will be able to reproduce and pass on their genes. So even though it seems unfair, and even though it would probably be pretty crap to be a male walrus, that's just part of how we evolve. And yeah, you wouldn't want to be a male praying mantis because they get their head eaten off. Yeah, that's what Bailey said. Yes, exactly. Okay, so we're going to get to that later. But first I want to talk to you about why this is. So when reproduction happens, it's the joining of two gametes, right? So gametes is the technical word for a sex cell, and one comes from the male and one comes from the female. And when they join, you get a fertilized egg, and then that grows into a living thing. However, back in the beginning, many, many years ago in the ocean, there was no such thing as male and female. And instead, when things wanted to reproduce, they would just release clouds of these reproductive cells. And the reproductive cells would just float around in the ocean until they came into contact with one another. And when they did come into contact with one another, they would form a new living thing and it would carry on with its life. Now, over time, the living things in the ocean started to produce bigger and bigger. Now, why would they do this? Why would they make these cells bigger and bigger? Why does that make sense? Why would evolution make these cells get bigger and bigger? What do you reckon? So Kieran's saying more genetic information. No, so actually it wouldn't be more genetic information. They still have the same amount of genetic information. They're just larger. And so Mark is saying maybe there's a bigger chance of them coming into contact. And there is a slightly bigger chance, but that's quite small. The main thing is they're more likely to survive. I know it looks, because I've drawn them really close together, like they're more likely to collide because they're bigger, but the main point is that they've got more food in them. There's more food stored inside them that has been produced by the parent to make sure that offspring is more likely to survive. So there was this evolutionary pressure that meant that everything alive started making bigger and bigger and bigger sex cells, because those would be the ones that would have a head start, be more likely to be able to control the food and dominate and pass on their genes and so on. And so for many millions of years, and nobody knows exactly how long this went on for, these sex cells in the ocean were getting bigger and bigger. Now again, there's still no such thing as female and male. It's just that all of these sex cells are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually some mutation happens where some living thing, let's call it this slug, rather than producing a small number of very large reproductive cells, instead it produces a huge number of absolutely tiny ones. Let's get the spray can thing. And it sprays them all out like this. And as a consequence, every single one of these big ones has no chance of encountering one another, because there are so many small ones around that they will definitely capture the large ones. And as a consequence, these small ones are essentially being parasitic on the larger ones. So the male invests almost no energy at all into each of the... Sorry, I said male. I've given the game away. But the genetic mutant that created these tiny little sex cells now puts almost zero investment into each of them, and yet captures all of the large cells. And so becomes very, very successful, because even though some of those cells will combine with one another and lead to a very unsuccessful offspring, the ones that combine with the big ones are much more likely to survive. And this goes on and on and on, and eventually it gets locked in place, and you get a system where what becomes known as female are the ones that produce the big reproductive cells, and what becomes known as male are the ones that produce the small ones that are parasitic on the female ones, because they just use the energy that's there. And this is the key idea behind the difference between female and male. You might hear people saying that it's to do with like biological appearance. You might hear people saying that it's to do with chromosomes, but actually none of those things are consistent across all life. If you start looking at all life, the only thing that is consistent across all life is that females make bigger reproductive cells, males make smaller ones. That's the only thing. So the key learning that we need to take from this is that, well, sorry, let's do another example first. I want to show you these birds. So which one of these birds is male and which one is female? Okay, so everyone's saying the left is the male, and the left is the male because that's the one that has put in so much energy to try to look good. And the reason why the male has to try and look impressive is because the female is dominant. The female is in charge, and the female will make the decision about whether reproduction occurs, because this makes sense naturally, because the female is the one who will make the biggest investment, and so therefore makes the big decision. And the male has to pour in huge amounts of time and energy into trying to convince the female that this should be the case. Now, if we flick out, so this is something that I've shown you guys before. This is a anglerfish. Oh. This is an anglerfish, and do you guys know if this is a female or a male anglerfish? Is it female or male? What do you reckon? Jeff's asking, how come humans kind of evolved the other way around? We're about to talk about exactly that. And Kieran's got the answer to the trick question, which is that it is a trick question. This is the female, and the male is this tiny little thing here. So this is a very extreme example of females being totally dominant, because the male is so unimportant in the life cycle that it's just this tiny little thing whose only role is to find a female, latch onto her, donate its reproductive cells, and that's just it. And then the female just absorbs the male. And the other example I've got is bees. So as you know, this is just a guy covered in bees. But if you, most of the bees that you'll ever encounter will be female bees, and the male bees do hardly anything. They just hang around and they wait until the queen bee summons them. And when the queen bee wants to reproduce with them, she just flies to a certain altitude. And only at a certain altitude will they take any interest in her, otherwise they'll just ignore her. But she knows exactly what this altitude is, so she's completely in control. And the males are just servants to this whole thing. So the key idea that I wanted to get across here is that across most of the animal kingdom, females are dominant, not males. So what is going on with humans? Why is there this huge inequality gap between females and males around the world? And I think actually we're in a time when things are starting to turn around the other way, and we still have a long way to go, but we're getting there. And I think that's a really, really good thing, because I think that time and time again, history has shown that often, like, having a lot more females in power makes for a lot better decisions being made. But anyway, I think that this will be shown in time anyway, as more females come into power, as it should be. But I'm just gonna. Oh, Leonardo's saying that, did you know that only female mosquitoes bite? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Angel is saying that's a good question. What's Jeff's question? The other humans involved with them. The other humans involved with the males being in charge, and the females would watch over the kids. Yeah, but there are also some theories about ancient humans where the looking after the family was a lot more balanced between males and females. So the thing that I wanted to show you about humans that is kind of interesting is that, one, we know that a lot of very ancient cultures, females were dominant. And two, just going back to the birds, I haven't got a picture right here, but if you I was supposed to put one in and I forgot, but if you look up Henry VIII, in his like tights and his fine robes and his like covered in decorations and his big crown and all that kind of stuff, Henry VIII, and then you compare him to his wives. Henry VIII was so decorated and colourful, and his wives wore much more plain clothes. And that was the case in the era in general. Men would dress up a lot, and females would generally wear more plain clothes. And that in some ways is much more naturally relates to the roles that it makes sense for us to play in some ways. in that males would have to impress females because it makes more sense for females to be more powerful because they have the bigger burdens to carry. And now, if you look at a picture of, say Boris Johnson, that's supposedly, they're kind of in equivalent roles in some ways. And Boris Johnson, rather than wearing all of this fine like robes and silks and stuff like that, he just wears a black suit. And now we have all these mad pressures on females to dress up and wear loads of makeup and to try and get to very sometimes very hard to reach body standards, and it must be very, very difficult being a female growing up within this, where you're constantly encouraged to appear like this bird on display, whereas on the other side you have males increasingly dressing in more plain colours, which has been the role for a long time, which has been what's the word, signposted in nature for a long time as being the more powerful ones dress the more plainly. And so there's still huge amounts of problems with humans where things are kind of flipped upside down and in like completely the wrong order because of the way that our society has been built. And basically our society is completely mad. And I'm gonna read some comments now. Anyway, so in the answer to the question of if you could choose, should you be female or male, depends on what species. But I also think that it's becoming increasingly good to be a female in human society, and I hope that trend continues, although there's still a long way to go. And I'm gonna look at the questions in the chat in a mo. Thanks so much for coming. And if you're watching on the website, then there should be a shiny new button where you can now give feedback if you haven't already, and that's always really appreciated if you could. But otherwise, please do tell your friends about what we're doing. And if you're on social media, then follow us on AimHi Live for updates, and we'll tell you what's coming up. And if you're on the website, you can now join our mailing list, and we will send you the weekly schedule every single week, so you can just get it straight to your inbox if you want to see what's coming up. Oh, in fact, this is what's coming up. I have it right here. It is this. Check it out. I've missed this off here, but at 4:30, I am doing one about should schools ban beef. So do come along to that if you want. It's actually going out to quite a lot of schools. But yeah, 4:30, which is in 3 hours. So come along if you'd like to see that. Right, I'm going to see what's in the chat now. You guys have all been chatting to one another. This is great. Tirawawa is talking about the turtle coming out of nowhere. Yes, sorry, tangent. I just went on a mad tangent. And Angel is saying that physically being female is annoying and frustrating, and that makes sense. There would be many times, but I do like it, and that's good. You got to like what you are. Japan Maple is saying, love the new website, thank you. And Tirawawa is saying, I smell like beef. Well, why don't you come along to the old beef one so you can find out. And right, okay. I don't think there are any questions because you guys are all chatting to one another, which is really nice. Anyway, I am going to say bye, and I will see you all at 4:30 if you're going to come to the one on no beef, and I'll see you at these ones. Come tomorrow if you want to do GCSE electricity made easy. If you were at the last one, I'm going to build on that and do voltage and current this time, maybe a bit more circuits. And then on Monday, I'm going to talk about what's carbon and how do greenhouse gases work, which you might already know a lot of that one, but I'll do some interesting asides on it as well. And then later on, I'm doing Is Water Wet next week. That one's going to be really good. All right, farewell all. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.